Good morning, everybody. I just want to remind you all that we're live streaming today's presentation. So if you can silence or turn off your cell phones, we appreciate it. And if there's a seat next to you, if you wouldn't mind scooting into the center in case anybody comes in late. All right. Thank you for being here.
Good morning. Welcome to the Parkinson Voice Project and the Clark and Bridget Lunn Parkinson's Education Center. I would like to thank Clark and Bridget Lunn for their commitment to this organization. I also want to thank Dr. and Mrs. Alan Wagner for sponsoring today's presentation. Let's give them a round of applause. My name is Daryl Bose. I completed Parkinson's Voice Project Speak Out Therapy program in February 2015 and have been an active member of the Loud Crowd ever since. I'm proud to be speaking with intent as I introduce today's presentation. Today's topic is the power of perseverance for living with Parkinson's. We will explore the concept of perseverance and the skills needed to survive and thrive with Parkinson's disease. I am honored to introduce today's speaker, Tim Hague Sr. Tim was diagnosed with young onset Parkinson's disease at age 46 before winning the first season of The Amazing Race Canada. To read Tim's full bio and view a recording of this lecture and others we have hosted, visit education and events at the ParkinsonVoiceProject.org website. Please join me in welcoming Tim Hague Sr.
Well, good morning. It's a pleasure to be in Dallas again. Y'all like it here? Where I come from, I live up in Canada. And it is beautiful there right now. It's about 80 degrees, 80, 85 degrees, sunny, gorgeous. Yeah, you like that now. Don't come in February. It's a different story in February. But it is a pleasure to be back. Thank you to Samantha and the team here at Parkinson's Voice Project for having me back. We were here last year, and it was a pleasure being here then. I'm so glad to be back and share a little bit more of my story. Now, I just have to point out, is this room shaking or is it just me? The room's shaking. Perfect. All right, well then let's leave because the roof's going to fall in. No, it's that time of morning for me. So I dose up before I come up here, and in about 10 minutes or so, it'll all settle down and I won't bounce around quite so much. But I appreciate the fact that you appreciate that. Parkinson's, what a joy, hey? Well, I want to tell you a little bit of my story this morning. I'm going to take you back to 1964. In 1964, a little baby was born into circumstances much different than most. Baby wasn't born into a family with mom and a dad. Matter of fact, there was no home. There was workers, no parents, a bed, no home. The mother was a 20-year-old white girl from the state of Iowa, middle America, found herself pregnant by a 30-year-old married black man. In Iowa, in 1964, this wasn't going to work. Now, being from a Christian home, abortion wasn't an option, but of course, neither was keeping the baby or staying at home. So at 20 years old, she was packed up, moved to Texas to have her baby and give it up for adoption. And, we'll come back to that thought. In 1964, America was in turmoil. John Glenn became the first U.S. astronaut to circle the globe, while the Beatles hit #1 for the first time. Muhammad Ali became boxing's heavyweight champion of the world. You remember these times? Yeah. Vietnam War was raging. Mary Poppins was a hit in theaters. And President Lyndon Johnson signed into law the Civil Rights Act of 1964 abolishing racial segregation in the United States. Now, for those of you who don't remember, I doubt if there's anybody in this crowd that doesn't remember what racial segregation was. It simply meant that whites didn't eat in the same restaurants as blacks, and blacks didn't go to the same schools as whites. Race riots toured America, and Martin Luther King Jr. accepted the Nobel Peace Prize that year. It was during this time that I was born a half-breed in a very black and white world. Now, question for you. What does one do with a biracial baby, as we were called, in 1964? Well, I'll tell you what you do. You hang out a free to good home sign and see if you get any takers. Now, the fact was, though, that there wasn't much of a market for this particular product, and if you leave it on the shelf too long, you let it get too old, you'd be stuck with it for good. So I was put on the speaking circuit literally from birth. I was taken from church to church, put on display, and offered any willing takers. Now, I'm told that it's not quite as bad as it sounds, and that it didn't take that long before my parents and I found each other. See, the pastor ran a home down in Robstown, Texas. You know where Robstown is? Just outside of Corpus. Yep, that's where I started. He was in the Kansas City area one evening. My parents were there, attended the service, saw this gorgeous baby boy that I was, mom's word, not mine, but decided she needed to hear a little bit more about this story. Well, the short story is that mom and dad fell in love with not only the beautiful baby boy that I was, but also the idea of saving me from certain disaster. For when you consider the odds aligned against me and the fact that I could have ended up a drug-addled convict long since dead, it amazes me that I've had the opportunity to pen these words. But it basically boiled down to this. Mom and dad fell in love with the idea. They decided that they would follow up on this a little bit. They saw a judge. The legal process basically boiled down to yeah, we'll take him. Signed a few papers. They had a new son, their first son. I'm sure that had they been astute enough to ask, they could have made a couple bucks on the transaction. But nonetheless, in our present age where adoptions run tens of thousands of dollars, I'm sure it comes as a shock to find out that I cost them absolutely nothing. So as things turned out, I ended up with a great home. My parents ended up with a great son. The orphanage ended up with one less mouth to feed. And I've had the opportunity to be here today. It is something that continually amazes me. It is from the hearing of these stories as told by my parents and my birth mom that I have learned to understand what it means to persevere. A young white girl off the farm in Iowa, pregnant by an older black man, the shame that would have been expressed, the anger, the isolation, the loneliness, as she walked through this, her first pregnancy, alone. For you see, few knew her circumstances, and even fewer reached out to help her. Yet she did everything in her power to see that I was given a life. She persevered. Then there were my parents. It's hard to imagine today, when cross-cultural marriages are so common, when we adopt children from all over the world into all color and shape of families. But back in the day, that simply was not the case. My parents were met with all kinds of derision, all kinds of advice, all kinds of shame, all kinds of warped ideas wrapped in religion that told them that it simply wasn't their place as a white couple to be adopting this black child. We informed everyone that I'm brown. And they simply saw life differently. They withstood the storm. They persevered. It's from these stories that we elicit a strong sense, a feeling of what it means to persevere. We understand that my parents did something that was unique, that took strength of character, that wasn't short-lived and that had to be endured. But I want to lift from the word I want to lift this word perseverance out of the emotional, and I want to put it into an objective light, because there is power to be found in understanding what it means to persevere. There is power to be found in understanding the word perseverance and living our lives with Parkinson's. You see, my parents in the day, they had their pastor show up, tell them that they were absolutely wrong in what they were doing. They again told him, disagreed with his theology. We moved on to a new church. But they've taught me, they've worked into my life the reality of what it means to persevere, to undergo hardship, to undergo difficulty, to be on the outside looking in on most occasions, and to have most people telling you that what you're doing is wrong or out of step. And they showed me in spades what it means to persevere. I've known my birth mother now for close to 30 years. She has shown me over and over again what it means to persevere, to understand to have some idea of what it was like for a 20-year-old white girl to be sent off to Texas by herself, to have this baby, only to be told that this baby was going to be kept in the orphanage because nobody wanted to adopt this kid, and her throwing an absolute fit saying that if you don't get him a home, I'm going to come back and take him. And how that threat motivated anyone, I'm still to this day not sure. But nonetheless, it did, and they ended up finding me a home. And the amazing thing about my parents that you have to know is not only did they adopt this kid, but they went on to adopt 5 more just like him. 5 more, in addition to the 3 of their own that they already had. I always told Mom, I said, you know you had more hearts than brains. That inevitably got me smacked. But nonetheless, I lift from their lives, their stories, this word perseverance, and the understanding of what they went through to make my life a possibility. And I take those lessons now and I apply them to Parkinson's. And I see that right from the beginning, my life was things were being worked into my life. This word perseverance was being worked into my character so that I'd be prepared in some way for this time now. So, these are the things that inspired me in writing my first book, simply entitled Perseverance. The 7 skills that you need to survive, thrive, and accomplish more than you ever imagined. The definition that I use for perseverance is simply this: to carry on in your course of action, even in the face of difficulty, with little or no evidence of success. To carry on in your course of action, even in the face of difficulty, with little or no evidence of success. Perseverance is more than just don't quit. It drives me insane to hear that sometimes. Just don't quit. Don't quit what? What am I not quitting? It's more than just don't quit. It's more than just hang in there. How many times have you been told with Parkinson's, just hang in there? Hang in there. If I'm hanging, I'm going to shake right off the ledge. I need to know something more than just hang in there. It's what we need when we've done all that we know to do and still can't see a way out of our problem. When you come to the end of your rope, you don't know what more to do. It's more than just hold on. You persevere. You carry on in your course of action, even in the face of difficulty, with little or no evidence of success. The 7 skills that I've listed in my book, Perseverance, are very straightforward, but they help us outline what it means to do more than just don't quit or to just hold on. The first skill in the power of perseverance is let go of the happiness myth, or don't believe the lie. We've often been told by our culture to let go of anything that doesn't make you happy. To let go of, to kick to the curb, to get rid of whatever doesn't make you happy. Now, I'm going to see if anybody agrees with me here, but there hasn't been a single day in the last 8.5 years since I've been diagnosed with Parkinson's that I have woken up happy going, yay, I have Parkinson's. I do wake up every morning like this, though. How many of you would disagree with that? You've woke up most every day of your life since being diagnosed with Parkinson's going, yeah, I'm happy about this. No. There's one guy had to raise his hand, but no. He's lying. I've never woken up happy to have Parkinson's. So what do I do with this cultural phenomenon that tells me if it doesn't make me happy, let it go. Get rid of it. Divorce it. Kick it to the side. I can't get rid of Parkinson's. So what? How do I go on? Well, I learned to persevere. I changed my attitude. I realized first and foremost that suffering happens to all of us. The sun shines and the rain falls in all of our lives. We all face difficulties no matter where we're at in this world. I've had the opportunity to travel to just about every continent. There's 2 more I need to get to. I have seen people in the most desperate places of poverty. I have met people in the most wealthiest of nations. And the one thing that you see, one of the things that you see and over again is the fact that all of them face difficulties, face suffering from time to time. We all face difficulties. And I think the first thing in the power of perseverance is to understand is to get our head around the fact that just because something doesn't make us happy, it doesn't necessarily need to leave, especially when it can't be gotten rid of. That there are times when we need to embrace the difficulty that we're facing and simply learn to walk through it. So this idea of embrace everything that makes you happy and get rid of everything else, I say, yeah, no, get rid of that lie. I put that in the same category as I do a conversation that I'd often have with my daughters. My girls would come to me and we would talk about the magazines and television and the various things they would see that depict what it means to be a normal or abnormal woman in our culture. And I would tell them, don't believe the lie. That is not what a young lady needs to look like. And I put that same idea into this context. Don't believe the lie that suffering should never enter our lives. It's a lie. Because I have found through the course of life, I have found in the example of my parents, I have found that as I walk through this disease called Parkinson's, that when I embrace suffering, it pushes me to persevere. And as I persevere, it does something. It changes me. It changes who I am as a person. It deepens my character. It makes me stronger. It forces me to learn things differently. It forces me to approach life differently. It forces me to find joy even in the midst of suffering. It teaches me to learn to live my life in a better way. It makes me a better person if I allow it to. And therein is the important piece, if I allow it to. Because I can't change the fact that I have Parkinson's. I can't give it away to any of you, and I'd be more than happy to if I could. But I can choose how to respond to it. I can choose how I'm going to live with it. And by allowing it to change my character, there is this amazing 4-letter word that I discover along the way. It's called hope. And I have learned that there is no hope without first learning to walk through suffering. You want to avoid suffering at all cost? I will warn you that you are unlikely to ever experience real hope. For you see, we will never see the stars if we're unwilling to walk through the darkness. The deeper the darkness, the more numerous and brilliant the stars. Changing our attitude towards suffering opens the door to perseverance. How many of you have ever gone camping, set out in the dark of night? I'll never forget a story. One year we went camping with our kids with some friends of ours, and we find this tennis court. And to this day, I can't tell you what this tennis court looked like because it was in the dead of night. It was pitch black. We all go out there and we lay down on this tennis court, and we look up at the stars. And there were 2 amazing things that happened that evening. One was this experience of absolute brilliant stars. Absolute brilliant, massive amount of stars that we were able to witness that night. The other was the fact that 3 people came by and talked to us, and I couldn't tell you to this day who they were because it was pitch black. But the analogy here is that even in the midst of our darkness, even when we walk through these shadows of death, even when we walk through these very difficult and trying times, if we will take the time to stop, look up, shift our gaze, we will find stars. We will find beacons of light and hope where we never imagined to find them before. But you will only find them if you're first willing to walk through the night. Don't discard suffering. Don't believe the lie that there is no place for suffering in our lives. The second skill is cease striving. If you'd had the opportunity to watch my son and I compete on the first season of The Amazing Race Canada, which we talked about last time I was here, how many of you saw that show? A few of you went back and watched it since the last time. First time I asked that question, it was like none. But if you'd watched this race on the first season of The Amazing Race Canada, you would have seen that we ran a classic underdog race. We were that Cinderella story that no one expected to happen. We were the dark horses, the come from behind Cinderella story that no one expected. We were error-prone and chronically behind. We had multiple opportunities to roll over and die, knowing full well that no one would have been surprised and few would have mourned our passing, because we sucked. Plain and simple, we sucked. If it wasn't my Parkinsons, it was our inability to read a map, and we were completely behind all the time. No one ever expected anything out of us. But you see, we approach the race with this attitude, this striving. And we often use striving as a good word until we really understand what it means. And you get a definition of the word striving, and it comes from the Old English to meaning to contend, to quarrel, to fight. But it also has attached to it a bit of the Old French for the word strife. It is that freaked out, stressed out way of thinking that says, by God, I'm going to make this thing happen no matter what it takes. And that's the way we came into the race. We came into the race saying, we're going to do this. Matter of fact, this is the way I came into Parkinson's. I came into Parkinson's saying, I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to make this happen. It's never going to define my life. I'm going to rule my world, and nobody's going to tell me what I can or can't do. 8.5 years later, if you are still of that mindset, I'll simply say good luck. If it works for you, come tell me how you figured it out, because it hasn't worked for me. I have found that I am not in control, that I can't make my tremor stop just because I want it to, that just because I'm on stage speaking somewhere and I'd far prefer to stand here quiet and still and be in command of my body, there are days it simply will not do what I want it to do. I don't get to call the shots. So, I can either choose to live within this reality and to live my best, or I can be angry. I can go home this afternoon and go, doggone, tremor wouldn't stop shaking the whole time I was up there. To what good? To what good? Absolutely nothing. I'm learning that aspect of the practice of wellness that nurtures my spiritual life. I've come to accept that there are things in life that are out of my control, but I've also come to accept that there is a caring and compassionate God of the universe who's got my back. In this acceptance, I'm learning to cease striving, to rest, to be still. Even when life will not go the way I want it to, even when life isn't going the way I expected it to, I'm learning to cease striving. By not making assumptions about the future, I can focus on today and do my best to live my best now within this reality. I can be content with what my best brings because I'm not comparing it to yesterday or any possible tomorrow. This attitude can lead to a real sense of peace because it allows me to develop a true sense of gratitude for where I am in life right now. In finding a place of peace, we can persevere. How odd would it be for me to allow a tremor this morning to overtake the absolute thrilling fact that I have the opportunity to be here with you? Seems silly, right? But isn't that what we do on a daily basis, or at least often? I get so wrapped up in the fact that my body won't do what I want it to do, that I'm not able to call the shots the way I want to call the shots, that I allow it to color everything else, instead of resting and being at peace in the reality that I get to be in Dallas today, that I get to be with this wonderful group of people, that I get to share a bit of my story with all of these people at home, and that together we can watch me shake and still have a fun time doing it. which is the better attitude? And yet I promise you folks, I haven't figured this all out. There are many days that I have to go back to my notes, all on my own, and be reminded, Tim, to cease striving. It is the strength to simply live my best, the courage to be content, and the will to persevere. Understanding the nature of luck, skill number 3. Yeah, it has a short fuse, a little bit of a long fuse there. Many would say that my life has been very lucky. And I would say in some aspects they're right. That I've been very fortunate, that life has fallen into good pastures for me, as they say. It's fallen into good places. And I have been very, very fortunate with all that I've been blessed with. But I also want to ask a question. Is it just a matter of dumb luck that all of this has happened? How is it that I was lucky enough to be adopted? How is it that I was lucky enough that my mom chose to give me life? My parents they chose to do what few others would have done in 1964. They chose to walk a road that, as I said, many told them they shouldn't be walking in the first place. But they chose to walk the road that was laid out for them and to see that I was cared for. My mother, my birth mom, well, it was a tough road for her, and yet she chose to give me life. Was I lucky enough to be given Parkinson's? Only about 10% of people are diagnosed with Parkinson's under the age of 50. I was 46. That's a pretty significant statistic when you think about it. If that was the statistic for winning the lottery, we'd all invest more. But since it's far higher than that, we shouldn't invest. But it's nonetheless a pretty unique lottery to win. My odds were not high in getting Parkinson's, yet here I stand with you this morning. Was I lucky enough to get on the Amazing Race Canada? We were chosen to be one of 9 teams, chosen out of 10,000 other teams that applied. Was it luck? Was it just dumb luck? I don't believe any of this is simple, blind, dumb luck. I believe we at times make our own luck. And we do that by simply staying on the path. It's amazing to me the stories you hear of musicians, artists, various people who all of a sudden are an overnight success. You take the time to look back into their careers and you see that they have been slaving for the last 30 years at their craft. Singing in dive bars, working in various things, trying to break through. And yet one day they get lucky and they make it big. I think that the same is true for us. If we ever expect to see any luck, if we ever expect to see any good come out of this disease, we have to be willing to stay on our path. We have to be willing to walk the path that we've been given to walk, stay focused, stay true to what we've been called to, and carry on. Even when it's difficult, even when it looks like there will never be any success, but to stay on our path and to stay true to it. Because we don't know where the next symptom control will come from. We don't know where the cure will ever come from. We simply don't know. But to give up, to sit at home, to do nothing, to not look after ourselves physically, to not look after ourselves intellectually or socially or spiritually or emotionally is foolhardy. We're guaranteed to never see any luck. We're guaranteed to never see any success if we do that. But rather, we need to stay on the path, doing the things that we know that we need to do to take care of ourselves. The critical aspect here is to simply stay on the road we've been called to walk. To show up every morning, stay on the journey, and you will be amazed by the luck you experience. This comes with one simple guarantee, and this I can say with all my heart. Step off your path. You will not only end up with a flat tire, but you will not see any luck. No goodness will come. So, stay true. Understand the true nature of luck. Number 4, accept limits. This is frustrating. This is a difficult piece to talk about. How many of you have ever heard someone say, Parkinson's will not define me? Heard that statement all the time? Well, I know I've heard it all the time because I always said it. Parkinson's is not going to define my life, like I said earlier. I'm going to call the shots. I'm going to set the parameters to my life. And I kept saying that right up until the point that it defined my life. And the first definition was when it took me out of nursing. I was a nurse for 21 years, and the day that I had to retire, I was like, well, if that's not a definition of Parkinson's on my life, I don't know what is. I was 51 years old, and trust me, folks, Freedom 51 sucks. You remember the old insurance commercials, Freedom 55? Yeah, Freedom 51 isn't much fun either. But nonetheless, I don't get to call the shots. I have had to learn to accept the limits that Parkinson's puts on my life. And if we don't like that terminology of defining our lives, well, I can guarantee you that it certainly sets parameters to it. It shades it, it colors it, and it makes it something other than what I would have chosen. I would have chosen to still be a nurse. I would have chosen to still be able to run a 7-minute mile. So I was always a runner, loved running. And for a long time, Parkinson's wouldn't let me run. And finally, with a new med, I've gotten a little bit of it back. I'm running 12-minute miles now. I am running, and that is the word. I am running. So I discussed this. I've discussed it a little bit. We'll skip forward here a little bit on this conversation, but I discuss this in more depth in my book, Perseverance. But it is truly all about accepting the fact that I am running, not about the fact of how fast I'm running. That Parkinson's may set parameters, it may shade and color my world, but it doesn't have to take everything. That I can accept the limits that it imposes, accept the parameters that it gives, and carry on from there. And the great big long word that I put into this portion of my talk is contentment. And I talked about it at length last time I was here, so I won't go into it a lot again. But there's a story back from last year that you can go look up about a giant elm tree that stood in my yard and how that elm tree was chopped down and the grief that brought us and the grief and I relate that to being my life being felled with Parkinson's, and that we can mourn the loss of that tree. We can mourn the loss of the beauty that existed there. But then what is our response? Well, our response has been to replant, to experience new beauty, new growth in place of the old, realizing that we'll never have the old elm tree back. It's gone. We'll never have the old beauty that might have been. But that doesn't negate the fact that we can have new beauty, new growth, experience new wonder in place of the old. And that for me is contentment. That is the learning of contentment alongside Parkinson's, and accepting that my old life was felled, but that my new life can be just as beautiful, just as wonderful as anything that might have been otherwise. Number 5, take every advantage. And this is an odd one. People sometimes ask me, really? You have to tell people this? And yeah, I have to tell people this. You see, in the Amazing Race, there's a thing called the U-turn. And what you're looking at there is the U-turn board. When you're running the race, you have the opportunity to slow another team down or see them eliminated from the race by making them do 2 tasks. At any given point, there will be an X number of tasks that you have to accomplish in a day. And when you come to this board, you can put a picture up there of one of the other teams and make them go back and do an extra task. Well, we did that. It got them eliminated from the show. It got them kicked off the show. Needless to say, they were not happy with us. A lot of people in Canada thought we were mean. Thought it was kind of foul play. That it was kind of unbecoming of the Tims to do such a thing. But let me tell you something. If you were in a race where there was $500,000 of prizes and cash on the line, would you do whatever you could do legally to win that race? I won't repeat what I just heard down here, but I agree with you, sister. Absolutely you would. Absolutely. The U-turn was an absolute fair part of the race. It was fair. It was within the rules. We applied it according to the rules, and the team that we U-turned couldn't keep up. They got eliminated. And I, to this day, say thank God, because they were a strong team. We caught them at the right time, put them out, and it gave us a huge leg up on where we were at in the race. We needed that push forward, and it worked huge to our advantage. So I say the same now with Parkinson's. There are times, whether it's medication, whether it's treatments, whether it's various things, that we're sometimes afraid, we're sometimes hesitant to take the advantages, the opportunities that are given to us. Sometimes in life we say to ourselves, oh, you know what, I didn't really earn that. Well, I'm not sure if I should do that because everybody else isn't going to get that. Is that fair? Look, folks, if an opportunity is put in your path, that opportunity is put in your path for a reason. I say take it. Use it. Be grateful. Acknowledge humbly the opportunity that's been placed before you and walk forward with it. Don't be afraid to take the advantages that are put in your place. Mine was retirement. Retirement. Like I said, I hated retiring. To this day, I sometimes hate retiring. It's been a little over 3 years, and it's still hard. There are some days I didn't realize it. I didn't realize how much I enjoyed the regularity of getting up and going to work. I always thought I hated it. I didn't realize how much I enjoyed the friendships that I had at work. My buddy that I would go to coffee with or to lunch with every other day or so. The friendships that I made along the way. All those things are gone. I thought I always hated work. Amazing what we find out we love when it's taken away from us. So here I am, 3 years retired, 54 years old. Could resent it. And some days I get a little irritated. Could be depressed, which I was. Could be angry some days, which I have been. Or I can stop and I can say, Tim, what are you doing? What are you thinking about? This is an advantage. This is an opportunity that's been placed in your life. Take it. So you know what we do? We travel. How many of us at 54 get to travel? How many of you were traveling at 54? A few of you. Most of you were waiting for 65, right? I'm not waiting for 65, folks. Lord only knows what I'll look like at 65. We get out and we travel now as much as we can. And we've been given a huge opportunity to enjoy life and to do things that most of my friends never do. So again, it's all about attitude. It's all about how we're going to approach this thing. How do I deal with this U-turn that's been thrown in my life called retirement? I can sit around and be depressed with it, or my wife Cheryl and I can get up and enjoy it, to take advantage of being relatively young, enjoy the fact that we have the opportunity, and go and make use of this opportunity. It showed up in the form of medication. I was that guy that took 3 years before I went on my first dose of levodopa. To this day, I still question my sanity on that. Not that I started, but that I started too late. I wonder if I would have stayed working longer if I had started my medication sooner. If I had gotten a leg up on this thing and been able to stay in my job just a little bit longer. I encourage you to not quickly or easily pass by the opportunities that are placed in your path, but to make use of them as they come to you. And we'll all respond differently, but to give careful consideration. This time in life has also afforded me the opportunity to start a charity, which I'm so very thrilled about. Who would have thought at 51 years old, you're retired, that you get to go start a charity? Well, some days I think I'm a little nuts, but we've had the opportunity to start U-Turn Parkinsons, which we'll talk a little bit more in a bit. We run, U-Turn Parkinsons. You like that? Wasn't my idea. I wish I could take credit for it, but I can't. But U-Turn Parkinsons, our goal is to slow the disease and to ultimately see it eliminated from life, and to help people, to empower people living with Parkinson's in their pursuit of wellness, to see them live their very best with this disease in the now as we possibly can. And we do that in a number of ways. We'll come back around to it. But had I not had the opportunity to retire at 51, I would have never started U-Turn Parkinson's. Had Parkinson's never entered my life, I would not be doing the things that I do today. And I've got a pretty doggone sweet life. It's amazing when you really think about it, what Parkinson's has done. Number 6, pay attention. We won the race, the amazing race, for one reason and one reason only. And that is the fact that my dear wife would say to us regularly, Tim, pay attention. How many of you guys have ever had your wife say that? Yeah, no hands go up. Well, gentlemen, let me assure you that this is the one time in life that I am thrilled beyond words that I paid attention to what my wife said. Because she said to me over and over again, she said, pay attention. There's going to be something on this race that you need to know, have memorized, repeat, something that you need to do at the end of the race that you're going to need to know. So pay attention. On the very first leg of the race, and I probably told this little story last time I was here, but it's worth retelling. Very first leg of the race, very first clue. At the top of the clue was a flag of British Columbia. When I saw that flag, I heard a little voice. It said, pay attention. We got to the end of the leg that day, standing on the mat with the host, John. And next beside the host was a greeter. And on the greeter's lapel was a little white flower. Turns out that flower was the provincial flower of the province of British Columbia. When I saw that flower, I heard a little voice. It said, pay attention. Every morning, every evening, my son and I committed to memory a flag and a flower. When we came to the last, when we actually got to the last challenge of the race, I walked into a room with 3 gigantic screens set up, bigger than this. And each one had a map of Canada on it. They handed us 2 sets of placards. One set of placards had flowers on it. The other one had flags on it. Out of the 3 teams that were left, there was only one old man with Parkinson's who in 2 attempts did what the other 2 teams never did because he paid attention. We had to put the flag and the flower on the right province or territory in Canada. I did all the flags, got them all the first time, did all the flowers. I wasn't sure about the Northwest Territories in British Columbia because they were both white multi-petaled flowers. Put them up wrong the first time, second time switched them, won the race. Why? Why? Paid attention. We knew our race. We knew what we were up against. We knew what we were doing. We kept our head in the game. We focused and we paid attention. It is the same with us now with Parkinson's. Stay in the game. Stay focused. Know your game. Take information only from trusted sources. There are so many lunatics out there. They will sell you anything under the sun. So many snake oil salesmen. You know there's a new cure every other day, right? I have been offered everything under the sun that's going to cure me. Everywhere I go, I'm offered something. So nobody offered me anything today. Take advice only from trusted sources. You have a great community here. You can trust this community. Some of my go-tos outside of this community are the Davis Finney Foundation, Michael J. Fox, and I have to tell you about this new podcast. Larry Gifford is a guy out in BC, British Columbia, Canada. Just started a podcast. He's 2 years diagnosed. He works for Sirius Radio. It's a radio company that goes across Canada. He's a kind of a big shot with them. But he puts on a fantastic podcast that's worth listening to. He doesn't pay me to say this, doesn't know I'm saying it, so there's no conflict there. But these are three of the best places that I go to for information when I'm looking for information on Parkinson's disease. And like I said, you have a wonderful resource right here in Parkinson's Voice Project. But listen to only those voices you know you can trust. Anyone selling you something that sounds like it's too good to be true, it is. It is. Let it go. Know your game. Trust wise counsel. And remember the flags and the flowers. Because there's coming a day when you're going to need that information. I don't know how, I don't know why, I don't know when, but there's coming a day when you're going to need to know that information that you've gathered. So hold on to it. And finally, oh, my slide is messed up. But anyway, find community. And what that is supposed to say is, kids, don't try this at or alone. Don't try this alone. This is what happens when you ship things across the internet. It's kind of like in the Matrix. It doesn't get all put back together properly. But don't try this thing called Parkinson's alone. We are not meant to walk this journey by ourselves. Parkinson's can be a very, very lonely journey if we allow ourselves to get caught at home alone all the time. I met a gentleman not long ago who had not been out of his house for 18 months after he was diagnosed. That's what Parkinson's does to us. It becomes frustrating to shake everywhere we go. I know, I get it, I understand. I know what it's like for people to constantly say to me, "Boy, Tim, you look great. You have Parkinson's?" You know how happy that makes me feel? And yes, you understand my sarcasm. It does make me happy. I am glad that I look so good. I am pleased that I don't necessarily look like I have Parkinson's, but it is frustrating to know that I don't feel half as good as they say I look. Thus, I need a community that gets me, that understands me, that knows what it's like to walk in my shoes. I have friends who hear the same thing. If you walked in here and you looked at them, you'd say, "You have Parkinson's?" I had a doctor one time. I'm in Emerge with my daughter. The doctor walks up to me and he asked me something about shaking or whatever. I said, "Oh, I have Parkinson's." Dead stop. Looked at me, literally looked me up and down. Says, "You don't have Parkinson's." Hallelujah! I'm healed. Dork. Says to me, "You're too young to have Parkinson's." I said, "Damn right." That's not in my notes. I'm not supposed to be there. But nonetheless, we need community. We need people who get us, who understand what that feels like, that understands what that looks like, to go day in and day out and to be misunderstood. For people to stare and not know what it's like to tremor, or to stutter step, or to slur your words, or to freeze. It gets tiring having to explain that to all of them out there. We need a safe place where we can come and it just be okay to shake. And it's okay to freeze. It's okay to stutter. It's okay to be who we are because we know that we get one another. And if you're at home listening to this and you don't have that kind of community, I implore you to find one. Make one. Reach out to someone on social media. There's all kinds of groups out there. Reach out to your local support group, your local Parkinson's group. Find people who understand you, who get you, who are willing and want to understand. Otherwise, this is a long, lonely road to walk. You can persevere. You can find your way, but it must be done in community. And this is where we started U-Turn Parkinson's. We run Rock City boxing classes. We run yoga Parkinson's. We do a little thing we call U-Tunes. Not iTunes, not YouTube, U-Tunes. And it's a music group, singing group. And we get together and we just sing, much like you do here. And the only criteria is you have to be willing to make a joyful noise. Don't have to know how to sing, don't have to really want to sing, just have to be willing to try to sing and make a joyful noise together. And the fascinating thing is we have a wonderful community, there of people who have come up together, learning to walk through this disease together, learning about one another and about what it means to walk with Parkinson's in community. We need one another. It's vastly important that we reach out. So like our race on the Amazing Race Canada, this race is not meant to be run alone. Not everyone can or wants to go start a full-blown charity, and I would caution you if you think you do. So you can build yourself a community in all these other ways that I've mentioned. We gain power through persevering when we let go of the happiness myth and change our attitude towards suffering. When we cease striving and address the spiritually significant questions in our lives. And if you haven't, I encourage you to. Those questions of, who am I? Why am I here? Why has this happened to me? Where am I going with this? And to answer those questions, because in answering those questions, we find peace. Understanding the nature of luck and knowing that it's all about simply staying on your path. That luck comes to those who simply show up. I had a boss who would tell me often, 80% of success is just showing up. Be willing to stay on your path and show up every day. Understanding the nature of luck, accept limits by developing the courage to be content, to be at ease. That definition of contentment, to be at ease in one situation. And I often like to ask, how many of you are at ease in your situation with Parkinson's? And if you say a hard no to that, then I encourage you to learn what it means to live contentedly with Parkinson's. Take every advantage by being grateful and making use of the opportunities that come your way. Because taking advantage of opportunities is simply gratitude. It really does boil down to gratitude. Saying, thank you for this gift I've been given, and being willing to make use of it. Pay attention. Know your game. Find community. You should never, ever try this alone. In these 7 skills lies the power of perseverance. I've learned from them. I've learned them from my parents. I've had them reinforced through the Amazing Race Canada, and I've come to see that they have the ability to empower us as we practice wellness on this journey with Parkinson's. We can do this. We can do this disease called Parkinson's. We can make it together. We have the ability and the strength to make this happen. But we need these 7 skills in order to do it. I've outlined them more in my book, Simply Perseverance. We'll have some after if you're interested. If you don't have a chance to pick one up today, you can find them on my website, timsenior.ca. But they're all outlined there for you in much more detail than we've gone through today. If you care to follow me, there's where you can follow me. But more important, most important of all, stay within your community here. Stay encouraged, stay positive, and no matter what, learn to persevere. Practice perseverance. When you're not sure where to go next, when you're not sure what you can do next, when you're not sure that you can hold on anymore, let go and persevere. Because if you're within a community, you don't have to hold on. If you're in the right community, they'll hold you. They will be there for you when you need them. You don't have to strive. You don't have to make this thing happen, because there will be others there to help you make it happen, to support you in your time of need, and to give you the strength that you can't find on your own. Practice perseverance, and you will be okay. It may not all be great, but it will be okay. This is what I'm learning. I hope that it helps you. And again, thank you so much for allowing me to come share a bit of my story with you today. It's been a pleasure.
Okay, we're going to start the Q&A. And as you were talking about take every advantage, you reminded me of one of the other lectures we had here by Connie Finney.
Oh, yeah.
And she talked about that also. She mentioned how take advantage of that handicap sticker. Those of us without Parkinson's would love to have one.
Yeah,
But
I'm waiting to get one of those. I want one.
she mentioned though, but what she brought up, I thought it was a really good point. She said it's not so much that Davis has trouble walking from the car to the store, or wherever they're going, but that he just needs a little bit more room to open the car door wider and get in there. So I was reminded of that. That lecture is on our website also by Connie Finney, but that would be an example of taking every advantage. It's okay to go do that. So anybody have we have a microphone on this side, and then we have one on this side. And if you'll wait till we get to you and hold it close to you and speak with intent. So I'll come right back to you.
Hi, Tim. Thank you for a great discussion this morning.
Very welcome.
The 7 steps from becoming perseverance, is one step more important than any of the others?
Is one more important than the other? I always start with let go of the happiness myth. I find that a lot of us struggle with that idea that we struggle with that idea that I should always be happy, that things should be perfect, that this is maddening, that this thing has entered my life. So I really encourage people to get past that, because I can't change my Parkinson's. I simply can't. And I know we've heard this message many times, and I'm probably speaking to the choir, literally here, in a lot of ways this morning. But that's where I encourage people to start. Understand that bad things happen to all of us, and that we have a choice in how we respond to the bad things. We can't always stop them, but there's some reason why they've come into our lives. And for me, with Parkinson's, like I said, it's given me far more than it's taken. It's been far more of a blessing to date than it has been a curse. And so as much as I don't like it, I have to acknowledge what it's done for me. It's only fair, it's only right that I acknowledge the rest of the story. And the fact is, if I didn't have Parkinson's, I wouldn't be standing here with you today. I'd be back nursing in a hospital somewhere. And while that's okay, this is way cooler. You're welcome. Thank you.
Another question?
Well, this is a little more medically oriented than it is philosophically oriented. The reason I'm asking you is because I'm experiencing extreme difficulty finding answers to this question. But along the way, have any of the medications that you have taken caused your blood pressure to dip significantly to the point that you are walking around in brain fog?
Well, first of all, it's the fact that you haven't been able to find any answers to this question and that you would pose it to me is humbling. But thank you. Now, this is strictly a personal response. But no, for me, I have not needed medication to cause brain fog. I get by with that just by living. But again, medication is so very specific to all of us. As you know, if all of us in the room have Parkinson's, we could all take the same drug and all have slightly different responses to it. So no, to be succinct, that hasn't happened to me.
There is a lecture, there's a record. So all of Parkinson Voice Project's lectures are recorded, and the recordings are on our website. There are a few that are specific about medications and also orthostatic hypotension, low blood pressure, Dr. Kluger's presentation about non-motor symptoms, and Dr. Jankovic talked about medication, so you might be able to find the resource there. Other questions? Don't be shy. All right, I'm on my way back there, and I'll be right back. Actually, here's a question. What are some other ways to take every advantage in relation to managing Parkinson's? Can you give us one other example?
Sure. I often don't talk about this anymore because I had somebody really not like it once, but I love this story, so I'm going to tell it anyway. I couldn't run forever. For the longest time, I could not run because I'd get cramps in my left foot. And like I said, I loved running. I started a new medication, which I'm not going to mention because it may not work for anybody else the way that it worked for me. But I started this medication, it took away the cramps, and I found I could run again. This last winter, in February, my daughter and I ran a half marathon. Now, why did I run a half marathon in the winter in Winnipeg? Because I'm crazy. Because that's when it was presented. That's when the opportunity presented itself. It wasn't my first choice. I wanted to go a fast marathon. I wanted to feel that old thrill again. But the reality was I was having to figure out my dose of medication so that I could keep myself on the track, that I could keep running. So we ran in February. The worst time I've ever run in my life, bar none. The worst time I've ever run a half marathon in my life. The fastest I've ever run with Parkinson's. The advantage presented itself then and there. So I took it. And am I proud of it? Damn straight.
All right, here's another question.
You actually changed my question. How did you train for the half marathon?
Very slowly.
I mean, did you use your regular routine, just slow it down, or did you
Yeah.
do some things different?
Regular routine, very slow. Very, very slow. And I want to caution. I know most of you in this room may not have ever run a half marathon and probably never will. Please don't take that away as the take home here. The point is taking advantage of the opportunity, whatever that opportunity is, when it presents itself. And the way that I took advantage of that opportunity was to get out and run very slowly, found my pace, took my time. When I was on the race, took extra meds, talked to my doctor, and make my way through it. I was supposed to run again in June. We have a Father's Day run that I was supposed to do with my family in June. Didn't do it. Fell off the wagon. Stopped running. Was traveling a lot. Gave myself lots of excuses. But it didn't happen. So I am thrilled that I took that advantage when all the pieces were in place that I could make it happen. Because it didn't happen in June. It's supposed to happen again this fall. That's not looking good either. So I'm thrilled that I took advantage of it then.
You going to try another one?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah. I love running. So we'll keep trying. Right now I'm just out for short runs, but we'll see what we can get to.
We have a question here.
Yeah.
Were you ever embarrassed to tell people that you have Parkinson's?
Interesting. No. It's actually something I've struggled with more recently, if that's not weird. I have, when I was first diagnosed, I was in nursing. We talked about health all the time, right? 2 years later, I was on The Amazing Race, and all of Canada knew that I had Parkinson's. It's only more recently that I have found that my world has shrunk a bit, that I don't go to the mall and get recognized anymore. And now it's when people walk up and go, oh, what's wrong? Now I notice that they notice the difference. And so now I'm finding myself dealing with it a little differently than I used to, if that's not odd, eh? Yeah, I'm backwards. I'm a little slow to come to things.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, we have another question here.
Thanks, Tim, for coming out today, giving up your Saturday. Do you try to suppress the shakes or the trembles, or do you just let them run their course?
I can't do anything about this tremor. Can't do a doggone thing about it. And as you see, it's still just clicking along. It has not relented in the last hour. I thought for sure it would, because I took an extra dose of med, which my doctor and I said is fine, and it won't relent today. So I don't know if it's just hot here. I slept well last night, so I stick my hand in my pocket. And you get to watch me shake. I put my hands out. Oh no. Well, before I did, yeah, it comes and goes. But I'm going to go make a chocolate milkshake now. Scrambled eggs. I had some for breakfast. It's really nice that way. You know, they did a new bit of research in Iowa University not long ago, hey? They found that if you give a person with Parkinson's a hand sickle, we can harvest almost as fast as a combine.
There's a question back here.
What's the best job for a person with Parkinson's? Bartender. Yeah, that's right.
Would you describe a little about what the boxing is like? Frequency, how long per visit, these kind of
Sure,
things?
sure. We run Rocksteady Boxing 5 times a week. We do the way we've got our structured is that we run 2 classes that are mixed. That means anybody can come to them, no matter your functional ability, and we tailor it accordingly. Then we have one class that's called Silver Gloves, and that's for our folks who are a little bit more functionally challenged, who need a little bit slower class. And then we've got Golden Gloves that I attend, higher function, and we go hard. I'm still sore from last week's class, but we tend to attend 2 a week. Ours are an hour long. Rocksteady suggests an hour and a half, but ours is an hour long. And they are boxing inspired exercise classes. We don't hit each other. Nobody ever gets hit. And we do bags, speed bags, heavy bags, hand pads, and then we run various circuits. And it's all about helping our coordination, our strength, our ability to walk. And we work with everybody across the spectrum. I have people who sit in their walkers to do their boxing. I have people who sit most of the class to do their exercises. I've got people like me who outrun me, younger than me, who participate in class. And so we run the whole spectrum in attempting to stay ahead of this thing. Because as you know, and I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but it just needs to be always said, there's one thing that we know that science has proven to slow this disease, and it is exercise. Exercise is your medicine. How many of you took your medicine today? How many of you took your pills? Okay. How many of you skip your pills from day to day? There's a couple brave souls. Most of us do not skip our meds every day. How many of you took your exercise medicine today? How many of you skipped your exercise medicine today? Why would you skip your meds? Don't skip your meds. We know that exercise will help you. It will. It's not my opinion. It is fact. Science has proven this. Get out and exercise. It will change your life.
Tim, the last time you were here, you talked about how you and your wife work together to manage Parkinson's, and you gave an example of what part she played in you traveling here and getting here to speak. And it really had a big impact on our loud crowd because they liked that you talked about that. And could you explain a little bit how you work together?
Sure. Thank you for bringing that up, Samantha, because that is one of the most important questions in my life. My wife and I will celebrate 34 next week. Yeah. So number one, she's a very patient woman. 2, the simple fact is, I've got the easiest job on the planet. My wife does everything to get me here, and I do this. If I did not have her, you wouldn't have me. I'd have to hire it out or something because, the fog, the mild cognitive impairment, that ability to deal with lots of detail, all gone, all gone. You want to stress this kid out? Tell him he has to start booking airline tickets. My God. Tell him he has to figure out how to get himself from Parkinson's Voice Project back to the airport by 4 o'clock. No. I have literally stood in airports. It's been a long time because she fixes me up now. I have stood in airports on the verge of tears, okay, maybe in tears, unsure whether I was supposed to get a cab, call an Uber, whether a car was being sent. I couldn't get my phone to work. Freaking out over the dumbest things. And that's what this dumb disease does to us. So, guess what? I got a gorgeous assistant. She takes care of everything for me, literally, front to back. She gives me, if I'm traveling by myself, which I rarely do, she hands me a sheet of paper that says, do this. At the top it says, pay attention. And then do this. And she literally gets me through. And then I've got wonderful assistants. My daughter's my assistant at the charity, and we have others who help out that make my life doable. because if you follow me at all and you see the stuff that I do, I literally have the easiest job on the planet. I get to go do all the fun stuff. There's a myriad of people behind me who make it actually happen, and I'm very, very, very grateful for them.
It can be challenging to multitask and to do so many things. Could you describe just on a, oh, that's
Got to
all
give
right.
something away.
That's okay.
That's okay.
Would you mind, so we understand, when you're traveling, but what about just regular days? Could you talk about how y'all work together to manage that? Because with Parkinson's, it can be challenging to multitask and to take care of all those things. So what would a day look like for you and your wife just kind of getting started?
Well, once she got used to having me in the house every day, things got a whole lot easier. But we divvy things up. I still mow the yard occasionally when I can't get the boy to do it. I'll take out the garbage, do those things, but she pays the bills. Some days I have no clue what's in the bank because that's, again, you want to stress me out? Throw a bank book in front of me. Tell me I have to balance this. Not a chance. She keeps us in order. If she wasn't our little household administrator, I fear I'd be in pretty rough shape because it's tough to keep track of everything. So she runs the details. I get involved in the big picture. Is that a fair way of putting it? She's in the back. I ask her everything.
Would you mind making some comments about driving?
Oh boy. I'm probably in the wrong crowd for this comment, but what's it been, about a year ago? Had a little event that scared the living daylights out of me. Me and my doc talked about it. We worked it all out. I still drive a fair bit. I don't like to drive. I've lost that automaticity. I know I'm too slow. I know I don't see things coming as fast as I used to. And am I safe? I'm safe. But it just feels different. It feels totally different. And I know in this crowd, you're the older generation here, driving has always been that thing that you don't like to let go of. And I'll be honest, I don't understand it. Because the day I can have a chauffeur, I'm taking it. Scares me to death some days, the guys I see drive in and out of U-turn. And I really encourage you to be honest with yourselves, to really understand what your reaction time is. Are you really managing this safely? Because nobody needs to get hurt, not you, not someone else. And I understand it's a hard thing to let go of, and especially if you live in a city that is car dependent and there's no mass transit, it can be very, very, very difficult. But it's so very important that you accept the limits that this thing places on you and be honest with yourselves, as I am. Because every now and then, the truth is for me, my reality is, she encourages me every now and then, you have to drive. Because I can drive, but I don't like it so much. And so she forces me to drive and keep active, keep that skill alive, and not just let it die. So you see, we all have stuff to deal with. It just looks a little different some days.
Do we have another question?
Hi, I'm Cheryl Hague, Tim's wife. I just want to.
That's right.
Oh,
Give her a
thank
big
you.
hand.
I just want to speak a little bit about being a partner in Parkinson's. I know we have all different terms for the person that walks alongside the person with Parkinson's, and sometimes you're called care partners. I like the partner in Parkinson's because we are partnering this together and we're learning this journey together. For Tim and I, it has been very important to me for him to realize that I need him as much as I have ever needed him, and that Parkinson's doesn't let him off the hook. I still need him to be my husband and to be a partner with me in life. And there are days when he doesn't, he's less willing to participate in life, and I have to encourage him. And there are days when he just simply can't, and I understand that too. But I would encourage you as a partner in Parkinson's to encourage your person with Parkinson's, to let them know that they are still a very much vibrant part of your life and that you need them as much as you have ever needed them. And there are things in your life that they can still for sure do that help you. There are definitely, our life every day is manageable because Tim takes on the things that he does in our house that help me. He does laundry. He does the dishes every night. He does, a lot of the yard work, not everything. He could do more.
Who gave her a mic?
But I want you to, as a partner in Parkinson's, to remember that they need to know that they're still needed, and they don't get off the hook just because they have Parkinson's. That they're still needed and a valuable part of your life.
Well, that was wonderful, right up until she started telling my bad stuff parts.
Good. We have another
I'm human.
question over here.
We have had in our family for generations a motto which is resolve well and persevere. This principle applies to all of our life as well as just Parkinson's.
That's very nice. Thank you. Thank you.
Question over here.
Hey, Tim. Yeah, thank you very much for your comments, and very motivational. And
thank you.
It's what we all need, is the motivation and the to overcome the apathy on the tough days. So that makes a huge difference. One question first of all: when are the Jets going to win the Stanley Cup? Oh, I'm sorry about that one.
No, very few chuckle here. Winnipeg Jets are our hockey team. They just came back to Canada, to Winnipeg, just a few years ago. We took them back from Arizona. And they'll get there, maybe this year.
Now, what I guess my question really, we're really lucky here in the Dallas area to have great movement disorder clinics and neurologists that are really specialized in Parkinson's. A lot of people around the world don't have access to that type of specialty care, and so you obviously you get questions. You probably get a lot of questions that are specialist oriented. That people ask the question, they're frustrated, they don't have access. How are you in Canada in particular? Because I've talked to others in Canada that have a concern about access to the type of specialty care they need. And in addition to the motivation, that's one of the biggest frustrations I think that I've seen.
Well, in Winnipeg, where I live, and Winnipeg is just straight north of here, right into Canada, we're very, very fortunate. We have 4 movement disorder specialists in a city of 800,000 people. We have a population of around 5,000 people with Parkinson's in the province, so we're very well served in relationship to other places. I mean, there are some that have nothing, so we're very, very fortunate in how things are looked after for us. We're fortunate that a lot of there's some prescription drug costs that eventually occur for folks, but by and large, things are taken care of for us. We're in a very nice place. Growing up in Kansas, people have often asked me would I come back, and it's like, well, I wouldn't give up my health care for love or money. And I find myself in a very, very fortunate position right now as far as healthcare is concerned.
I'd like to ask a question geared towards the young onset population. I wondered if you could talk a little bit about how old your children were when you were diagnosed, and how you and Cheryl managed the household, because I know how hard teenagers are without Parkinson's.
Yeah. Well, 8 years. The twins, we have 21-year-old twins right now. That would have made them about 12. My daughter the second child would have been about 16 and 20 when I was diagnosed. So in actual fact, the older kids probably took it harder than the younger ones. Because for the young ones, 12 years old, does it affect me? Is dad dying? Those are the 2 important questions. Questions no, the answer is no, so on they go. The others probably were a little more difficult. They got on the internet. I don't know if we were as fast as we should have been or not in answering questions, but it probably freaked them out the most because they got a handle on what it could be. They came to realize that As much as we say Parkinson's won't kill you, well, I've watched people with severe swallowing difficulties related to Parkinson's, and I would argue that point. Parkinson's can kill you. So they started to see stuff like that and began to worry about Dad. And so that was pretty tough. So what we tried to do along the way was make sure that we were answering their questions in as age-appropriate manner as we possibly could, because there's the 8-year gap between the kids. We're obviously not saying to the 12-year-olds the same thing we'd say to the 20-year-old. But we tried to answer all of their questions as best we could in an age-appropriate way as they came up. And it's an ongoing. They're experiencing Parkinson's as we experience Parkinson's. You know, they've seen Dad at work with Parkinson's. They've seen Dad retire with Parkinson's. They've seen Dad run fast in the past. They see Dad struggle to run it all now. They walk with us as we go along. And so it's a continual effort to connect with them, to know how they're feeling, and to know what their questions are, so that they're staying abreast of what's relevant and real in my life.
Question over here.
This one's regarding that as well. I have Parkinson's. My grandchildren's grandfather on the other side has Parkinson's, and they are worried about getting it themselves since it is genetic. Have you been tested? And are the children being tested to see if they have the gene?
No, not yet. We've not even really discussed this yet, but our knee jerk, like I said, it took me 3 years to start my meds. Our knee jerk is to leave it alone. If things are okay, don't fix what's not broken. That's not always the right road to walk, but that tends to be our knee jerk. So will we address that at some point in life? Yeah, probably. But today we haven't.
My addressing that put my grandchildren at ease, knowing that genetically mine was a freak. I did not carry the gene for having Parkinson's. Of course, it happened, and to me, it's a blessing. But to everybody else, it wouldn't be. It just relieved them by my telling them that I have not. Now, on the other side, it is passed through. It was from the grandfather, from the great grandfather to the grandfather to now their father and their uncle both carry the gene.
Interesting. Yeah, I did the spit in the tube for my DNA. I can tell you I'm mostly from the UK, but I haven't done it for Parkinson's yet. I guess an Englishman with a good tan, eh?
Okay, we have another question over here.
I have Parkinson's, and I find that most people that don't have Parkinson's have no real understanding of what we go through. They think, well, it's just like Michael J. Fox or something. How's Canada, non-Parkinson's patients in Canada? Do they have a good understanding of Parkinson's disease?
No. Very few people understand Parkinson's. And they understand it. The younger we get with Parkinson's, the less they understand it. People just don't. I find that people in general really just don't get it. If they know that there's anything about Parkinson's beyond a tremor, I'm shocked. But generally it's a tremor and it's an older man's disease. So again, when I tell them that I have Parkinson's, they're almost always shocked. Almost always. So there's a lot of education still to be done. There's a lot more to tell people about in regards to what Parkinson's really is. And I think that's incumbent upon us in large part, that we've got to tell our stories. We have to continually tell people what we experience with this disease, the good parts and the bad parts, so that they really do understand what we go through, because they really don't understand as a general rule, is my impression. Thank you for the question.
And a question back here.
Can you speak a little bit about the swallowing problems that people have from Parkinson's?
Well, I can. I don't want to freak anybody out, because remember, I was a nurse. I've nursed lots of people with Parkinson's. But one of the most vivid memories that I've ever had with Parkinson's disease was well before I was ever diagnosed. And I was nursing a gentleman who had very severe Parkinson's, was bedridden, and he eventually passed away because he, the big fancy word is aspirated. But the simple fact is he choked. He couldn't clear his airway. He couldn't swallow. And remember, these things don't happen to all of us. We can't foretell our future. We don't know where we're going. But why do I go to U-Tunes every week and sing? I don't feel like choking to death. I'm going to do everything I can to protect this voice for my speaking career, because I want to keep being able to do this. And when I go out of this world, I hope it's a nice, quiet little fall asleep at night and don't wake up the next day. Last thing I want to do is suffer the way that gentleman did.
Okay, I just want to bring up, since this is what Parkinson Voice Project does. So the statistics show that 90% of people with Parkinson's will experience speech difficulties sometime during the course of their illness. And aspiration pneumonia, it's not a good statistic, will be the cause of death for 70% of people with Parkinson's. But this is precisely why Parkinson Voice Project exists. So people with Parkinson's need speech therapy. When you go through speech therapy, you're exercising the muscles you use for speaking and for swallowing, so that the more speech language pathologists we get trained in our Speak Out and our Loud Crowd program, those statistics are hopefully going to reduce. There won't be as many people having difficulty with choking and aspiration pneumonia. And I'll just take this opportunity to say, I think maybe a lot of you know, but maybe not, is that Parkinson Voice Project awarded 149 grants this year to speech therapy clinics around the U.S., including a couple in Australia, Canada.
Yeah.
I think there's a grant site near you, and also Israel, where these speech language pathologists are taking the program that we developed here at Parkinson Voice Project, Speak Out and the Loud Crowd, to their communities. So if you're watching online, you can go to parkinsonvoiceproject.org and you can look for a Speak Out provider in your area, or you can call us, because that is exactly what our mission is to help people with Parkinson's preserve their ability to speak and to swallow, and the treatment is very effective. So we have one more question, and then I think we're done for today. One more question.
Not really a question, it's a comment. I would like to comment on Samantha's play on the just her talking about the Voice Project. It is a community. We are safe here. We feel good here. We feel comfortable here. Just like the lecture today, we're all here together for the same reason. And she stays true to her mission. She is regaining and maintaining our voices. And that helps us to swallow better and the exercise. But you have to buy into it. You can't just come and take the training and then go home and stay on your couch. You got to come into it, and you've got to be here. And thank you, Tim, it was a very good lecture today. I've seen both of them, and I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
So we have a little gift for you. Don't worry, we won't send it with you on the plane. We'll ship it to you. But one of our Loud Crowd members went around town looking for the Parkinson's tulip. And if y'all aren't aware that the Parkinson's tulip was named after Dr. James Parkinson, red tulip with white tips. That's why a lot of different Parkinson's organizations have the red tulip. And she found this tulip in a yard here in Dallas.
Oh, nice.
We can't swear it's the James Parkinson tulip, but it looks like it.
That's beautiful.
So this is for you.
Well,
and
thank you very
we
much.
will, and we're going to go ahead and ship that to you. Let's give Tim and Cheryl a round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It is certainly my pleasure to be here today. Thank you so much for having me, Samantha, and all your staff. Thank you for the good work that you do here, for attempting to help us take care of our voices. That's so important. So if you're not attending here yet, did you hear those statistics she gave? If that doesn't motivate you to come check it out, I'm not sure what will. So I really want to encourage you to come out and see what they're doing here. So thank you very much, Sam.
And we'll have a recording of this presentation at parkinsonvoiceproject.org under our education and events by next Friday. Thank you, everyone, for coming today. Thank you, Tim.